Jazz players will sometimes alter dominant chords or the dominant scale for richer harmonic possibilities. And a lot of these sounds are unsuitable even for pretty jazzy or swingy sounding country. At least some of them are usable. And one of the ones that is common in all kinds of music is the augmented chord and the augmented sound. There is a D augmented chord right there. If you ever change your mind. Or on the verse of Crazy, worrying, why do I make myself worry, wondering what in the world I can do. There's a G 7th augmented chord. So it's a pretty common chord, almost always a held chord used at the end of a chorus to come back into the verse or something like that. And what is it that is augmented about an augmented chord? What does that mean? Well, what it means is that the fifth of the chord is sharped a half step. In the proper terminology, when you sharp a perfect fifth, is to call it an augmented fifth. And so a D augmented chord is, rather than having D, F sharp, A, has D, F sharp, A sharp, same as B flat, but keeping the spelling proper. And then if it's played, if you have room to get the seventh chord, C, in there as well, you would do that. That form that I'm showing you, you don't have room to get the C actually in there. And the way that you play over that, you can just simply play a D dominant scale or run of some, just changing the A to A sharp. You also can use both the A and the A sharp. So that's a nice sound. Here it is in this upper octave, playing a D chord from the F sharp. The textbook scale to use over an augmented chord is the whole tone scale. And the whole tone scale, as the name implies, is created by starting on your root note D as our 5 chord here in the key of G, and ascending by whole steps. So that would be D, E, F sharp. So far it's exactly the same as our D dominant scale. The next note up, however, would be G sharp rather than G. So it has a sharp fourth. That is the same as a flat 5, which is kind of the bluest of the blue notes. Then the next step up would be that A sharp, the augmented fifth. Then the C, which is the flat 7, and there you are back at our root D. And sometimes that G sharp is problematic. I mean, it's a pretty outside sounding note. We're in the key of G, and here you are playing that note a half a step above. And so sometimes you may find that that entire scale is problematic to use, and just simply concentrate on playing the notes of the arpeggio itself. The augmented scale is, maybe useful as a kind of a sound effect scale. It has what has been called a kind of a cartoonish character. If you take the major third, or D, F sharp there, let's start it up here, and proceed by whole steps, it has that sound. It's an unstable kind of sound. Imagine it in a Bugs Bunny cartoon or something, when Bugs is going down the drain or something like that. At any rate, you may find that useful and you may not, but just so you'll understand what they're talking about when they say, oh yeah man, you play the whole tone scale over the augmented chord. Almost more for informational purposes, because some of these sounds are pretty hard to stick in on country or western swing tunes. But the notes that are altered for altered dominance in a dominant chord are the 5th and the 9th. And so for altered sounds, jazz players will sometimes use that sharp 5, sometimes will use that flat 5, the what we looked at as the G sharp in the whole tone scale, same as an A flat. That is, in my mind, problematic to use. The other two notes that are sometimes used as altered notes is the 9th is sometimes played sharped and or flatted, and that is a sound that you may be able to get into your swingier sounding country tunes, the Nightlife or Crazy or City Lights. And just to show you what that is, we have talked about ninths before. You start on the D is 1, 3, 5, 7, the C, skip the 7, skip the 8, we're back to the octave, and the 9th note up is the note E, which we have talked about is a nice addition to the D dominant sound, not necessarily a country sound. We use it more in blues, but it's a good sound. And so what jazzers will do is to sharp, E sharp, same as F, and E flat. And so this would be the sound. The Mickey Baker Book 1 example he uses of that is starting on the A note, playing the A minor 7th type run first. Or off that augmented sweepy thing. Oh, the nightlife ain't no good life. So play around with that. You may find they sound better sitting at home on the couch playing by yourself than doing it on the bandstand. Part of the secret of all this stuff is to, when you play it, act like you meant it, and it'll work out. I want to mention, since we're on the subject of flat ninths, we talked about the similarity on a diminished arpeggio compared with the chord you're leaving. And so that is another place you can get a jazz sound that works fairly well sometimes, using the going from the D in our arpeggio of D, F sharp, A, C, going up a half a step from that, the D sharp, and playing a D sharp diminished arpeggio and resolving to the next note, next chord, which would be G. Or maybe when you get up on the top, come back and make it sound, put the D back in there so it sounds like you've come back to your D chord before resolving to C. And that is another use of the diminished chord or the diminished arpeggio serving as a D, the dominant flat ninth sound.